Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I'm joined by a very interesting guest today who's building a private equity-backed company that is a distributed model. This is a business that has 250 people across roughly 25 locations across the U.S., and so over the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about the unique challenges of how you do that. How do you build a culture in a distributed company, and especially in a healthcare and medical type of environment? Fred Ward is the CEO of Marquee Dental Partners. Now, if you don't know Marquee, they're one of the biggest, one of the top brands in dentistry nationally with, like I said, about 25 locations. This is a portfolio company of Chicago Pacific founders, one of the top PE funds nationally. And Fred, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff.
Really excited to dig into this. So before we kind of talk about the people part of the business, maybe just give us 60 seconds on Marquee Dental Partners, kind of the size and scope of the business and how you came to get involved.
Sure. So as you mentioned, about 25 practices, primarily in the southeastern part of the U.S., started from 0 practices in 2015. So within a year, through the course of about 10 acquisitions, we built a platform. From that, then we've added 4 additional acquisitions, and later this week we'll close one more, and by the end of June we'll close on another. So we are growing quickly, and my involvement came back in late 2016. I got a call with this opportunity in a relatively new business, still in the ramp-up phase, looking for operations leadership, and I was happy to come to Nashville and join Marquee Dental.
Got it. You're headquartered in Nashville, obviously.
That is correct.
So when you roll up and purchase these dental practices in the Southeast, what are the main efficiencies or economies of scale that Marquee can bring to these dental practices? In other words, what's kind of the investment thesis behind it? And then we'll migrate into the people part of that.
Sure. The biggest opportunity areas today in dentistry lie in insurance reimbursements, which tend to decline, if you can imagine that, in a world where other things are inflating at an aggressive rate. Reimbursement rates from payers decline. When you have a group of our size or groups that are even bigger, we have opportunity leverage with the payers because we provide broader coverage to their patient bases. So we have opportunity then to get higher reimbursement rates for dentists for procedures they perform. We also have pricing benefits with suppliers, dental suppliers, and laboratories.
Got it. So
those are the biggies.
There's some economies of scale and some real leverage that you get with size and scale.
Absolutely.
And I have to imagine part of it is just technology. There's so much happening in dental technology now that all kinds of new equipment and processes that I assume you're able to provide better training and systems across the practices.
That's right. We can, in effect, put on a class with just our people because of our scale and bring in a world-class instructor on a piece of equipment or technology and, again, fill a classroom. And so for us, it's a very efficient way to train, keep our dentists and hygienists on the leading edge of the latest in clinical capabilities.
Got it. So I have to imagine there's some unique challenges here, and I'd love to spend some time digging into those. One is this is a distributed company, meaning you got people all across the Southeast. And so, how do you build a culture and consistency and values in that kind of environment? Another is you're dealing with healthcare folks and with dentists my dad was a dentist, and it's not like you're just hiring an employee. These are well-trained, intelligent, high income often folks. And so there's some unique people challenges, I have to imagine. Maybe you could tell us about some of those and what have you learned at Marquee is the key to getting the most out of the organization?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's when you have a distributed group of players, you need, and just as the workforce today, there are people today, people that work from home. You have to have people that are turned on by performance, turned on by success, and can work autonomously. So those are a couple of things that I found right away. Is find winners, and then find people that can work alone, work on their own without you constantly having to, direct them.
Uh-huh.
Right. And regarding dentists, it's an interesting point, because when I talk to dentists who are interested in selling a practice to Marquee, the first thing I try to do is spend time with the dentist, just the dentist and I, to establish a relationship, to make sure that this doctor will fit with the all-star group of dentists I have today.
Yeah.
And make sure that we would fit for this dentist. And that it hasn't always been the case, Jeff, as you can imagine.
Sure,
right?
there must be some lone rangers who just are not going to want to be part of an organization, even if they
that's right.
even if they say they will.
That's right, and you can tell, we can tell, any of us could tell as you talk with someone whether they're really into what they're saying, whether they're really being genuine about it, or whether they're just looking for a solution.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the part on the front end. I spend a lot of time on the front end with dentists, trying to make sure that the cultural adaptation is going to be simpler than it might otherwise be. And because we've learned through the course of 14 now acquisitions that when a doctor was not vetted appropriately to be a cultural match, that can lead to frustrations on both sides.
Which then I guess begs the question of cultural match. So tell us what you have identified as the core tenets of the Marquee culture, so that as you're meeting with these folks, you can establish whether there's a match or not. You can obviously only do that if you know what Marquee stands for, what's non-negotiable, et cetera. Maybe you've even put words to it. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a heavy question. The three things that I think about that are quickly identifiable with our culture. First of all, do you enjoy working with other people? Secondly, is your overall disposition one of happiness? And then thirdly, are you driven to perform? Are you driven to produce? And the truth is, Jeff, the dental stats will tell us that 60+% of the American adult population over the age of 30 has some form of gum disease.
Yeah.
And over 50% have some form of decay, tooth decay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty of dentistry to be done. It's not a question of whether we find a doctor that just wants to do dentistry and tries to run up the dental bill. That's not what this means. What it means is, are you willing to do what's sitting in front of you? Because there's plenty, as I said, plenty of decay and disease that needs to be taken care of.
Yep.
So ambition and drive for success is one of our key values. Happiness, a happy disposition, and thirdly, are you a team player?
I love that happy disposition because, and I know this from my dad, dentistry is the kind of field where, let's face it, there's a lot of unhappy folks that I know that the suicide rates in dentistry are above average, and there's just a lot of people that are sorry they chose the profession. And so it's interesting that you're looking for the exceptions to that rule. Why is happiness so important? I know that sounds like a silly question, but what is it about that characteristic that's so vital?
That's a really interesting way of thinking about it. Dentists, for all of the reasons you stated, to my view has been, if I can put a happy team of people around you as a dentist, it's generally harder for you to be moody.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, here's the other piece. Most hygienists are women. Most of the managers in a dental practice are women. Most of the dental assistants are women. And they generally want to be happy and happier than, and so and the dentists tend to be split. And in fact, more are becoming, I think we're now closer to 50-50 than we've ever been in terms of male-female split in dentistry. So women tend to want to be more harmonious, has been my experience in dentistry. And so by virtue of the fact that most of the people around the dentist are women, you better have a culture that is built around where happiness is valued.
Mm-hmm.
And, the other piece that I would add to that, Jeff, as I talk with doctors, as I mentioned to you, when I'm acquiring or interested in acquiring a practice, I visit with that dentist multiple times, and I listen to the way he or she describes their team. And from that, you can glean, are they generally happy with their team? Are they generally happy in their world? Do they have a personal life? What are the things they do outside of work? And all of those things are to me, indicators of their view of the world. And are they generally happy or generally dissatisfied?
Yep. Amazing. It's a very interesting twist on it. There's a whole body of science around the field of happiness, right?
Right.
And it's interesting that you found the need and the importance of finding that characteristic. So is it non-negotiable if you find a dental practice that you want to acquire and bring into the fold, and you meet with the folks and you get a sense these are not happy people or some of these other characteristics, will you walk even if the price is great?
We have.
You have.
We have.
And so how hard is that to do? I know it sounds easy, but you're excited about the business. The numbers look great. What does that look like?
Well, you have to think of the downstream implications of a decision to partner up with an unhappy group, an unhappy doctor, right? So you're going to be dealing with this unhappiness, and you just introduced to your, my culture, our culture, an unhappy person, when in fact we've gone out and I've evangelized about this particular trait in our culture about around happiness. So by virtue of my own actions and role modeling, bringing an unhappy character into our culture, what am I telling everyone else? So I have no trouble at all walking away. It does, on the other side of the equation, create additional pressures to find other acquisitions, right? I mean, we all have targets to hit. And so if I pass on a very good opportunity because of the cultural fit is not right, then it creates for me other, call it pressures or other, I've got to go find a solution in other places. That's fine. I've done it, as I said.
What do you do if you don't discover this until it's too late? So you bring a business into the fold, you acquire the company, or frankly, just hire someone, and they don't meet these core non-negotiable characteristics. What do? I mean, no one has 100% perfect batting average when it comes to, assessing these points.
Sure. Well, let me. I don't have a dental example, but let me give you an example from a previous experience when I was a leader in another business. I had an employee who was good, but he was really hard on people because he was generally an unhappy guy. And I flew into town, and before I flew in, I told him that I'd like to take he and his family to dinner as a way of recognizing his performance. And he seemed pretty happy about that. So we got together, and what I found by doing that, it turned out to be a turning point for he and I, and principally for him with his work team. He would go home and grouse about work. And when I spoke with his wife and kids had a very different view of me. Let's just say it that way. So maybe his unhappiness had to do with me at the time. But when they met me, they didn't see a guy with a black cape on and horns, and they came to realize that I was a family person just like he was, and I was I was interested in what the kids were doing at school and so on. And from that, I think for him, maybe they humanized me. They made me more approachable for him, and he became more comfortable talking about his work relationship with me, I suppose. And it changed the way he handled his own people and led his own people. And it really was a turning point for him, because from there he got promoted, not because of his performance. He had always done well performance-wise. It was all the piece that always held him back was the human resource part, the treatment of his team, the leadership of his team,
Right.
From a people standpoint. So it turned for him, he and I never did a post-mortem to understand really what clicked for him at that dinner, but something did click and change him for the better. And so that would be my, I suppose, my example of how I was able to in this particular case, turn a generally unhappy guy into maybe a better leader. I'd like to believe as a better leader.
But it ain't easy. I mean, it doesn't always happen it doesn't always end that happily, right?
No, it does not. It does not.
What advice can you offer our listeners on this question of building a distributed culture? You got 250 people, I think you said, over roughly 25 locations, was it roughly?
That is correct, yeah.
And so, even my basic math, 10 per location. How do you build a consistent culture, focus, vision? I'm sure you're on the road visiting those offices, making the rounds. But beyond that, what else have you found works really well?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and you're from Chicago, Jeff, the Cubs did not win the World Series by having Baltimore's talent, right? The Cubs won with Cubs talent.
Yep.
The Red Sox won last year with Red Sox talent. The biggest thing is you've got to find all-stars wherever you are. And they're out there. And in a dentistry particularly, finding the best is not that easy because dentistry is not that big of a space.
Yeah.
There are a lot of dentists out there, but not a lot of group dentists, right? The groups are growing. Groups like Marquee are growing. But today, the prevailing dental office is a single practice dentist. So finding all-stars is difficult, as you can imagine. They're not all-stars because they're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is finding the talent, the winning talent. And when you've got that talent and they are driven toward their own success, and they're able to work alone. And again, they match this culture of happiness, this culture of being a team player, but they want to win. They look at the scoreboard every day, and they keep track, and they're trying to reach the person that's just ahead of them in the ranking and that sort of thing. Those are the types of people you want because they don't need your constant intervention to help them, to motivate them, or to drive them. That's the first piece.
Yep.
It comes from within. And the second is, the vision that I've, that we've laid out here is about that and Chicago Pacific has sort of taken the lead on this theme. But the idea is we can improve the overall health of the U.S. population by providing better oral health care. So for Marquee, the vision I laid out for the doctors and the hygienists and so on is you are the first line of defense against poor systemic health. And so you have a responsibility to eradicate disease and prevent disease when we can, and get patients to come in 2 times a year at a minimum for their checkup and a cleaning to make sure we keep them on the rails. And I know, and we've demonstrated that when you come into your dentist 2 times per year, over the course of 2 or 3 years, you may pay some amount of money to get restored to health and get rid of the decay and the disease. But 2 or 3 years from now, your healthcare issues are going to decline and your overall healthcare costs are going to decline. So that's a vision that the doctors and hygienists have been rallying around. That's one that motivates them because they accept that responsibility to be the first line of defense toward restoring people to better health. I suppose is a better way to say it.
So it is a very big mission, and people may chuckle at this, but you really have created a big goal, a big mission that unites the team regardless of what location they're in. And if they sign up to that mission of improved healthcare, lower long-term costs, et cetera, that acts as the unifying glue. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That is it.
And
that's right.
Does it work? Sounds like you're convinced it works, but I guess the skeptic listener might say, how do you know that works? It sounds good, but what proof do you have that it's worth spending time even trying to get people on the same page?
Well, we're on the front end of our own data collection on this to prove the math is right. The math that I've laid out for you, that over 2 to 3 years we can reduce your overall healthcare costs. But I know that the motivation or the when I talk with doctors who want to sell their practice and I lay this vision out, you sort of see them relax. You can see them thinking to themselves, I can get behind that. I believe in that. I'm in favor of that. So that's what, one of my mentors, Steve Bilt, who's the CEO of Smile Brands, used to say to me, your vision has to be simple and clear and should fit on a fortune cookie. I've always believed that it has to be, it's like the Nike vision, right? Just do it and those types of things. But the truth is, we haven't gotten to that succinct level yet. But when I lay this out in a 30-second or a 1-minute sort of way that I did with you, people get it and they get behind it. And so
or they don't.
Prove. Well, right. And if they don't, then they won't sign up to sell.
Yeah, you got a different discussion, right?
Sure, right. But it is hard to not get behind that, isn't it? When you think about it, like, hey, listen, we're the front line of defense, right?
Yep.
Oh, I don't want that responsibility. Well, geez, you're a doctor, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard one to deny, but that's okay. Look, it's not going to be inspiring to everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah. I give you
but they
so
can't
much
be here, right?
What's that, Fred?
But they can't be here.
Yeah, that's right. You invite them to pursue their career elsewhere, right?
Right. Yes, correct.
Well, Fred, I give you a lot of credit. You've overcome some pretty unique, people challenges in building this very successful company and scaling it. I got to hand it to you, especially as the son of a dentist. I know that's not easy. These are not just your typical employees that you just kind of hire. And so clearly you're doing something right. How can people learn more about Marquee or get in touch?
Well, clearly the website marqueedental.com is one way to do it. The opportunity that you've provided me here to talk about Marquee I very much appreciate. It is through things like this that people learn about us. We are a small and a young company, but we're growing. And as we begin to reach out in the Southeast and work our way north and west, you'll hear more about us. But I appreciate this opportunity, Jeff.
Great. Thank you so much for making the time today.
Okay. Have a great day.